In the summer of 1942, Adolf Hitler ordered his armies to capture a single city on the banks of the Volga River. He wanted it not just for strategy, he wanted it because of its name. Stalingrad, the city of Stalin. What followed was the largest, bloodiest, most brutal battle in the history of human warfare. 2 million soldiers, two of the most powerful armies on Earth, locked in a single city for 200 days. Neither side was permitted to retreat. Neither side was permitted to surrender. And by the time it was over, the course of the entire Second World War had changed forever. By the summer of 1942, Nazi Germany had already conquered most of Europe. France had fallen. Poland was occupied. The Wehrmacht had pushed deep into the Soviet Union, the largest land invasion in history. Millions of Soviet soldiers had been captured or killed. City after city had fallen, but the Soviet Union had not collapsed, and Hitler needed a decisive blow. His generals advised him to focus on Moscow, the Soviet capital, cut off the head and the body would fall. Hitler had a different plan. He turned south. The goal was the Caucasus, the oil fields that powered the Soviet war machine. Without fuel, Soviet tanks would stop. Soviet planes would fall from the sky. The Red Army would grind to a halt. To reach the Caucasus, the Wehrmacht needed to secure its flank. And on that flank, sitting on a cliff above the Volga River, was a city of 500,000 people. Stalingrad. Hitler became fixated on it. His generals warned him it was a distraction. He overruled them. The city would be taken. His city bearing Stalin's name would fall, and with it, Soviet morale. He did not understand what he was about to begin. Then, August 23, 1942, the German Luftwaffe launched one of the most devastating air raids of the war. Over 1,000 aircraft, wave after wave. For an entire day and night, Stalingrad burned. The oil storage tanks on the riverbank exploded, sending columns of black smoke 3,000 meters into the sky, visible for hundreds of kilometers. The Volga River itself appeared to catch fire as burning oil spread across its surface. 40,000 civilians died in a single day, and yet the city did not fall. Soviet soldiers fought street by street, factory by factory, floor by floor, room by room. The fighting that developed in Stalingrad was unlike anything any army had ever experienced. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, Rat War. In Rattenkrieg, tanks were useless in narrow streets. Artillery killed friend and friend alike. The side with more men and more equipment had no advantage. What mattered was who was willing to fight closer, dirtier, and longer. Soviet commanders discovered something critical. If their soldiers stayed close enough to the German lines, the Luftwaffe could not bomb them without hitting their own troops. They called it hugging the enemy. The closer you got to death, the safer you were. In the middle of the destroyed city stood an ordinary apartment building. In September 1942, a Soviet sergeant named Yakov Pavlov led a group of soldiers to clear the building of German troops. They succeeded, and then they stayed. For 58 days, a small group of Soviet soldiers held that building against repeated German attacks. Hay reinforced the walls. They dug anti-tank ditches around the perimeter. They created firing positions in every window. The building became a fortress. It became a symbol. Pavlov's house, as it came to be known, held. The Germans never took it. After the war, it was said that more German soldiers died trying to capture Pavlov's house than died in the entire German capture of France. Across the city, thousands of similar stories played out. Snipers became legends, men and women who hunted German officers from the rubble, one shot at a time, making every movement through the city a death sentence. The most famous Soviet sniper at Stalingrad, Vasily Zaitsev, killed over 200 German soldiers in less than 3 months. The Germans sent their best sniper from Berlin to hunt him. Zaitsev killed him too. While the brutal street fighting consumed German attention inside the city, Soviet commanders were planning something far larger. General Georgy Zhukov, the most brilliant Soviet military mind of the war, had noticed something. The German flanks north and south of Stalingrad were held not by elite Wehrmacht troops, but by Romanian and Italian allies. Less equipped, less motivated, stretched thin across hundreds of kilometers of frozen steppe. Zhukov proposed a plan of breathtaking ambition. Two massive Soviet forces would strike simultaneously, not at the city, but at those weak flanks. They would sweep around Stalingrad like two arms reaching to embrace each other, and trap the entire German 6th Army inside. On November 19, 1942, with temperatures already dropping below -20 degrees Celsius, Operation Uranus began. The Romanian and Italian lines collapsed within hours. Soviet armored columns poured through the gaps. Within 4 days, the two Soviet forces met at the town of Kalak. The encirclement was complete. 300,000 German soldiers, the entire 6th Army, the pride of the Wehrmacht, were surrounded. Cut off. Trapped in a shrinking pocket of frozen steppe and burning city. Hitler ordered them to hold. He promised that supplies would be flown in. He promised that a relief force was coming. The supplies never came in sufficient quantities. The relief force was stopped 50 kilometers from the city. The 6th Army was alone. What followed was a slow, terrible death of an entire army. The temperature dropped to -40. The surrounded German soldiers had summer uniforms. They had been promised the war in Russia would be over before winter. They burned furniture for warmth. They ate their horses. Then they ate rats. Then they ate nothing. Frostbite claimed fingers, toes, noses. Disease spread through the overcrowded ruins. Men who had been elite soldiers became walking skeletons. Soviet forces tightened the ring day by day. The pocket shrank. The airfield that was the Army's last lifeline fell in January. On January 31, 1943, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, commander of the 6th Army, surrendered. It was the first time a German field marshal had ever surrendered in battle. Hitler was speechless. He had personally promoted Paulus to field marshal just 2 days earlier, believing no German field marshal would allow himself to be captured alive. Of the 300,000 German soldiers trapped at Stalingrad, approximately 91,000 survived to surrender. Of those 91,000, only 6,000 ever returned to Germany. Most died in Soviet prisoner camps. Of cold, of disease, of starvation. The same fate they had dealt to millions of Soviet prisoners. The Battle of Stalingrad lasted 199 days. From August 23, 1942 to February 2, 1943. Total casualties on both sides, approximately 2 million. Dead, wounded, captured. 2 million human beings in a single battle for a single city. After Stalingrad, Germany never mounted a major offensive on the Eastern Front again. The tide of the war had turned. What had seemed like inevitable German victory was now inevitable German defeat. It would take 2 more years, tens of millions more deaths, the destruction of entire nations. But the turning point, the moment the war changed, happened in the ruins of a city on the Volga River, a city that refused to fall. In the center of modern Volgograd, the city formerly known as Stalingrad, stands a statue 85 meters tall. The motherland calls. A woman with a sword raised to the sky, calling her children to battle. She stands on top of a hill where some of the fiercest fighting occurred. Beneath that hill, the remains of over 35,000 Soviet soldiers who were never identified. Men who fell so far from home that no one ever came to collect them. They are still there. Subscribe to Echoes of Collapse. Every week, another moment when history refused to be forgotten.